Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here, and today I'm going to share with you a technique that will make learning chords so much easier. And by learning chords, I mean truly internalizing them so you can kind of sit back and just watch your hands do their thing as they find the keys and make the kind of music you want to make. So let's do a demonstration. We're going to pick a chord voicing from my Sick Chords Volume 1 collection, and this is a C69 sharp 11 voicing. Sounds like this. So the notes are C, G, A, D, and F sharp. Okay, so how do we use X-ray mode? Well, X-ray mode is where you break down or analyze a chord in as many different ways as you can. And there are three ways that I recommend doing this. The first one is the most straightforward, and that is simply to, instead of thinking about the pitches as note names, think of them as numbers. Instead of thinking about C as C, we think of it as 1, or the root. G is 5, A is 6, D is the 9, and F sharp is the sharp 11. So now we have what I call a chord recipe. And actually, I created a companion resource to Sick Chords Volume 1 that I call the Chord Cookbook. And that's all the voicings from Sick Chords translated into numbers instead of note names, which makes it so much easier to transpose into other keys. And as a special something for everyone who's watching this video, I'm going to make both Sick Chords and the Chord Cookbook available as one bundle called the Sick Chords Everything Bundle, and you can get it for a real low price. I'll link that down in the description below. But let's keep going here. So the first way into this chord is by analyzing it in terms of numbers, creating the chord recipe, 1, 5, 6, 9, sharp 11. Having that number sequence will make it much easier to transpose the voicing into other keys. So say you're doing it in F, well, in the key of F, 1 is F, 5 is C, 6 is D, 9 is G, and the sharp 11 is B. So now I can play it in the key of C and in the key of F, and ideally I would take this voicing and transpose it through all 12 keys to internalize it as much as possible. But there are other ways of breaking down a chord besides just looking at the chord recipe. So let's go over another method of turning on X-ray mode, and that is by looking for chords within chords. So if I play this voicing again in C, well, if I just play what I have in the right hand here, that's a D major triad in second inversion. It's just this part right here. That's a D major triad in second inversion. And then if I look at the bottom half of the voicing in my left hand, that's a C power chord. Sometimes that's written out like C5. So we have C5 in the left hand, and then we have this D major triad in second inversion. Okay, so that's another way of breaking it down. But again, I can't just be thinking about letter names or note names like C and D. I have to better understand the relationship between this D major triad and the root of the chord. So what's the relationship? Well, D is a whole step above C. So if I were to play this voicing in F, well, I'd play my F power chord in the left hand, and then in my right hand, I'm going to play the major triad that is a whole step above the root of the chord. The root of the chord is F. What's a whole step above F? It's G. So I'm going to play a G major chord in second inversion. Like that, with my power chord underneath. And there's my voicing. This is another way into the voicing. That's the idea of the X-ray method. You're getting inside the voicing as many ways as possible. We started with the chord recipe. Now we're looking at chords within chords. And that's the beauty of learning music. It's the beauty of learning anything. You take what you already know, you look for what's familiar within the unfamiliar. But there is yet another lens that we can look at this voicing through, and that is the lens of intervals. So we already talked about in the left hand, this power chord here, that's the interval of a fifth. So you know you're going to have a fifth in the bottom part of this voicing. And then you can also take note of the relationship between where your left hand and your right hand meet. So if I'm playing this in my right hand and this in my left hand, well, I can look at that meeting point between the two hands and note that that's a whole step. So whenever I'm building out this voicing and I get the fifth, which is the easy part, I know I have to start my right hand a whole step above where my left hand leaves off. So again, let's pick a new key just to make this a little bit more challenging. Let's try E major. I'm going to play a fifth in my left hand. That's the easy part. E and B, and I know that my right hand is going to start a whole step above where my left hand leaves off. What's a whole step above B? C sharp. And then from there I can build that major triad in second inversion, which is an F major triad. And then bringing back that second part of the X-ray mode where I was looking for chords within chords, well, there's my F sharp major triad in combination with my E power chord. One other real quick example when it comes to looking at chords in terms of intervals is a really classic voicing called the So What voicing. It's the voicing that's used in Miles Davis's tune So What. Sounds like this. And this voicing makes a ton of sense when described in intervals. So I'll write it out real quick. It's a D, a G, a C, an F, and an A. And the chord is D minor 7. It's actually kind of a D minor 11 chord because we have the 11 right in here. So if I were to write out the chord recipe, it would look like this. We've got the 1, we've already written in the 11, C is the 7, F is the 3rd, and A is the 5. That is one way of taking an X-ray of this voicing. But as I said, looking at it more intervallically is a much easier way of internalizing this particular voicing, and that's because we have this repetition of the interval of a fourth. D to G is a fourth, G to C is a fourth, C to F is a fourth, and then on top we have this third. So we have stacked fourths with a third on top. There's the fourths, and then my third on top of that. That's how you analyze this chord in terms of intervals. So when you work through a chord collection like Sick Chords Volume 1, for instance, make sure you're not just memorizing the names of the notes. You want to analyze the chords in terms of chord recipe, that is the formula, the number sequence. You want to look for chords within chords, and you want to look at the interval relationships between the notes. Any kind of pattern that you can recognize will make it much easier for you to internalize that new information so that your hands can just do what they do and you can enjoy the process of making music and not trying to remember what notes go to what chords. So if you want to check out that special bundle of Sick Chords Volume 1 alongside the chord cookbook, it's linked in the description and somewhere on the screen. And if you want to watch another video where we get into some other cool stuff, you can click right over here and I'll see you over there. Thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.